The restaurant had been my choice. Small, warm, tucked between two art galleries with frosted windows that blurred the rainy street outside. I'd found it on one of my long walks during chemo, when I had hair like straw and skin like wax and legs like reeds. I passed it every Thursday after treatment, too tired to go in, but somehow calmed by the smell of garlic and rosemary that clung to the alley around it. When the doctor told me I was in remission, the first thing I thought about wasn't celebration. It was air, breathing, the simple quiet of waking up and not counting days like beads on a string. But my mother insisted. "You need to mark it," she said. "It's a miracle after all. Everyone wants to celebrate you." Everyone, apparently, meant my sister. I should have known by the way she showed up 40 minutes late, dripping with drama, scarf flung over her shoulder like she was arriving at a gala and not my remission dinner. She kissed the air beside my cheek like we were strangers on a red carpet. "God, you look better than I expected," she said, with a tight-lipped smile. I looked at my plate and stirred the olive oil with a piece of cold bread. She always had a way of saying things that left you shivering, even when wrapped in compliments. I had hoped it would be quiet. Just Mom, Dad, my Aunt Marianne, and her. I'd even worn the gray dress I used to call my almost pretty dress, the one that still hung on me a little loose, but didn't make me look sick anymore. They brought out champagne. I declined. I was still on meds. A toast was made, words were said, mostly about God and luck and strength, none of which I felt. Then she stood up. I remember the way her hand went to her belly, how her lips trembled, not with joy but with anticipation, the kind that feeds on attention like oxygen. I remember the way my mother turned her head quickly, as if she'd been waiting, as if this moment had been hers too, and then, like a cruel echo, "Well, since we're already celebrating life," she placed her hand on her stomach. "I'm pregnant." The room erupted, clapping, laughing. My aunt cried out, "Oh my God, finally." My dad stood up to hug her, his eyes wide like he'd just won the lottery, and I sat there, still as I had been during every scan, every needle, every waiting room chair. The room blurred, not from tears, but from the glassiness of sheer disbelief. It took them 12 minutes to return to me. 12 minutes before someone remembered, "Oh right, the cancer." "Oh, honey," my mom said, reaching for my hand. "Isn't this the best gift? Life, everywhere." I nodded. Because nodding was easier than breaking, I excused myself to the restroom and stayed there until the candle on the dessert burned down into wax. That night, I didn't cry. I packed away my gray dress and folded the card my aunt had written. Then I made tea, sat in my small apartment with the one soft lamp, and deleted the group chat they'd created called New Beginnings. I've learned that silence doesn't start all at once. It begins with pauses, like the one between her announcement and their reaction, like the one between my mother reaching for her and my father standing for the hug. No one reached for me. No one stood for me. That space, those 12 minutes, stretched long after I left the restaurant. It followed me into my apartment. It waited with me while my tea steeped. It curled into bed beside me that night, whispering what I already knew. It had never been about me. Not really. The next morning, I opened the fridge and stared at the half slice of lemon cake they boxed up for me. untouched. Next to it was a magnet photo from last summer. All of us, arms around each other at the lake. But now I saw it differently. My hand wasn't even fully in the frame, like I had been cropped out, in spirit. Even when I was there in body, I took it down. Not in anger. Just because I didn't want to see it anymore. I didn't text her. I didn't text any of them. But 2 days later, she posted it. Best night ever. So grateful to share our little miracle with the fam. Her standing at the table, everyone clapping, my father mid-laugh, my mother dabbing her eyes. No, sign of me. I was behind the lens, apparently. Or just not worth capturing. That caption clawed at something in me. Our little miracle. It echoed the same tone she used when she beat me to telling Mom about my college scholarship back in high school. So, she could break the news in a fun way. Or when she cried at my graduation, because she had just broken up with a guy, and everyone spent the night comforting her while I ate my celebratory dinner in silence. Or the time she got my favorite childhood toy accidentally thrown out, while rearranging our old bedroom, and somehow I ended up apologizing for being sentimental. I used to call it coincidence. Then I called it bad timing. Now I know the word. Erasure. She never yelled. Never hit. Never insulted me outright. She just arrived. Louder, shinier, needing more. And everyone adjusted. Even me. That week, I visited the oncology ward. I brought bagels and sat with June, the nurse who held my hair while I vomited into a pink basin at 3 a.m. on my 3rd chemo cycle. She hugged me like I mattered. She asked how I was really feeling. Not how exciting or what's next. Just, are you okay being okay? I told her about the dinner, about the announcement. She didn't offer pity, just nodded and said softly, "You survived." Twice that night. When I came home, I made a decision. Small, quiet, mine. I unfollowed the family group chat. No message, no drama, just gone. Then I opened a blank notebook. Wrote one line. The last time I let them speak over me was the night I stopped asking to be heard. Would you like me to continue with part 3 next? It'll begin layering more memories. From childhood and college years, the slow erosion of the narrator's place in the family, and the first signs of emotional detachment becoming permanent. Absolutely. Here's the continuation of, they let her announce her pregnancy at my cancer remission dinner. Growing up, our house had 2 staircases, one narrow, one wide. She always took the wide one. It sounds small, but it wasn't. I remember birthdays where she'd come downstairs, first wearing my favorite color like it had never belonged to me. She'd accidentally spoil surprises by walking into the kitchen early or finding gifts hidden in the closet. And I was always the quiet one. The one they called mature, which I've since learned is just a euphemism for neglected. With grace. When I got into college on scholarship, I printed the acceptance email, taped it to the fridge. She didn't look up from her cereal when she said, "Well, I could have gotten in too if I'd tried. I just don't like that school." Our mom agreed. "She's right. You two are just different. No need to compare. You both shine." But we didn't. She shined. I glowed in the reflection. She once borrowed my car for a quick trip and returned it 2 days later with a scratch down the side and glitter in the back seat. She laughed it off. "It's not like it's a new car anyway." When I was diagnosed, she cried harder than I did. She told everyone. Posted a story on her Instagram before I'd even told my friends. I found out when a coworker messaged me, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were sick. I saw your sister's post. I texted her to take it down. She replied, "People are just trying to be supportive. You're being really negative about this." She has a way of bleeding into every version of my life, like water damage, quiet, slow, permanent. I started therapy after the second round of chemo. My counselor asked me, "When do you feel most safe?" I didn't know how to answer. But the next time I came home and heard her voice on speakerphone in my mother's kitchen, I knew it wasn't then. The funny thing about surviving cancer is people think you've come back new, like you've been polished, enlightened. But I didn't come back new. I came back clearer. Clear that I could walk away. Clear that I didn't owe them performances anymore. Clear that the story of her didn't have to be the story of me. The silence I gave them wasn't punishment. It was preservation. They didn't notice right away. They still sent texts, invites, updates. At first, I replied with a polite, "Congrats," or "Have fun." But eventually, even that felt like applause for a show I never bought tickets to. So I stopped clapping. I didn't mean to miss the baby shower. Or maybe I did. The invitation came on pink cardstock, sealed with a gold sticker that said, "Oh baby," like a shout I hadn't asked for. It was addressed to Auntie, as if the title could summon affection I'd never been given the space to feel. I left the envelope unopened on the counter for 3 days. When I finally tore it open, the scent of rose perfume hit me first. Always her signature. Inside, we're so excited to celebrate. This little miracle. Join us as we shower her with love. Underlined in silver. No gifts necessary. Your presence is the present. That was the lie. My presence had always been required, not wanted, not really. When I told Mom I wasn't going, her silence was elastic, stretched long, tight, until it snapped. "She really wants you there," she said eventually. "Don't make this about you." That part stung, not because it was cruel, but because it echoed something I'd heard my whole life. The suggestion that my absence was selfish, that my grief was somehow an attention grab. She didn't ask how I'd been sleeping. Didn't ask if I still flinched when I caught sight of my scars in the mirror. Didn't ask if I was afraid it might come back. She only asked me to show up for her. Again. I stared at my hands after that call. They've changed, these hands. Thinner. Slower. There's a tremor now when I reach for things without thinking. Sometimes I blame the chemo. Sometimes I wonder if it's just the weight of all the things I never said. The morning of the shower, I went to the bookstore instead. Bought myself a second-hand copy of a novel I'd loved in high school. Dog-eared and scribbled with someone else's thoughts in the margins. I read the first 50 pages in the cafe. The sun warmed my knees through the window, and I thought, so, this is what peace feels like when no one is expecting you. She didn't text me after the shower, not that day, not the next. But Mom did. A single line. "You embarrassed her. Everyone noticed you weren't there." I didn't reply. Instead, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, took the invitation still pinned to my fridge and slowly tore it, down the middle, then again, until it was confetti in my palm. I dropped it into the trash. Then I took out the trash, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for cleaning something out. The first Christmas after remission, I didn't go home. They had already set the theme, baby's first Christmas, even though she wasn't due until spring. She texted me a photo of the tree, white and gold ornaments, pastel stockings labeled with names. One for her, one for her husband, one for the baby, none for me. "It'll be so cute when she's here," she wrote. "No mention of me. No, we missed you last year. No, how are you doing now? I used to love Christmas, not the noise, but the quiet bits, the lights reflecting on snow, the late nights by the window, sipping cocoa and reading while everyone else slept. But at home, holidays were something else. Her big entrances, her themed dresses, her loudly whispered secrets to Mom during dinner, making the rest of us invisible in our own dining room. Once, I baked cookies for everyone, carefully, from scratch. She showed up with a boxed cake and got all the compliments. Mom said, "Isn't it lovely how she always knows what people want?" I stopped baking after that. They always used to tell me, "Don't be so sensitive." But they never said that to her when she cried about birthday gifts not being expensive enough. Or when she stormed out because someone joked about her messy handwriting. Her messes were passion. Mine were problems. This year, on Christmas Eve, I went to the ocean, alone, wrapped in a thick scarf, sipping coffee from a paper cup, boots digging into the sand. It was gray and biting, and completely mine. No cameras, no staged laughter, no explaining where I'd been. I got their group photo the next morning. Texted by Dad. "Merry Christmas from us." Everyone in red, her holding up a tiny onesie like it was a trophy. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then turned off my phone. Later, I made soup, lit a candle, read another chapter of the second-hand book with the scribbled margins, and I realized something simple, something still. I wasn't lonely. I was unobserved, and that was different. It started with a bill, a small one. An automatic payment I'd forgotten to cancel after moving out. I was going through my bank statements, sorting receipts, unsubscribing from things I no longer used, when I saw it. Electric utility, $89.40, due monthly, for their house. Not mine. I stared at it. Then I checked the date. The same billing cycle I'd been covering since the month after I was diagnosed. They didn't ask me to. Not directly. But Mom had called that spring, voice tight. "Your father got furloughed, and the baby's on the way, and you're hardly using your money just sitting at home." I had nodded, tired, numb, still swallowing mouth sores and anti-nausea pills, still pretending it didn't sting to hear my recovery framed as financial dead weight. So I agreed. I paid, every month. They never brought it up again. I hovered over the payment, then over the auto-pay settings. My thumb rested on the toggle. It took 3 tries before I pressed it. Cancel. No note. No warning. Just quiet reclamation. The next morning, Mom texted, "Hey, the electricity bill didn't go through. Did your card change?" I didn't reply right away. I went on a walk instead. The wind bit at my cheeks. Felt good. Real. By the time I got home, her follow-up had arrived. "I know you've been going through things, but it's not right to just stop helping without telling us." I sat with that for a while. The implication that I owed them something, that my pain had to keep giving. Then I typed, "I thought you said the celebration was about new life, so I'm stepping into mine." I didn't wait for a reply. I muted the conversation. That night, I lit a candle, a small one. Sandalwood and vanilla. The kind I used to save for special occasions, But now? Now the occasion was this. I had stopped financing my own erasure. January passed like melted snow. Quiet, slow, unremarked. I didn't call on my sister's due date. Didn't ask about her appointments. Didn't check the registry. She never reached out either. But my mother did. Only when something was missing. Did. You canceled the Costco card? We couldn't get the baby formula discount. That message came with no greeting. No, how are you? Just the kind of reaching out that's shaped like a hand, but feels like a hook. I didn't answer. It's funny how long people can ignore your presence until they trip over your absence. February brought cold rain and emails from old classmates I barely remembered. A few had heard about the cancer, months too late. They were kind. Awkward, but kind. One of them, Maya, sent me a voice note. Said she saw my sister's announcement and thought, wait, wasn't that supposed to be her celebration? I listened to the message twice, not because I needed to, because I liked the sound of being seen. Even just once, I've started a ritual now. Every Friday I walk to the same cafe near the bay. They know my name. They spell it right. They even remember I like my coffee extra hot, with cinnamon. There's a man who reads poetry there, soft-spoken, early gray in his beard. We don't talk much, but we nod. There's a respect in being gently acknowledged. One afternoon, I got a group text photo. She's here. Meet baby Ella Grace. My sister, swaddled in hospital sheets, mascara perfectly placed, the baby red and wrinkled in her arms, Mom leaning in, glowing like a queen. I wasn't tagged. The message didn't even use my name. But the silence that followed after I didn't reply, that was the loudest thing they'd ever sent me. 3 days later, Dad called. Unusual. He rarely calls unless there's something wrong with the car or a bill due. I let it ring. Then another message came, from my mother. It's time to let things go. This is family. You can't stay mad forever. But I wasn't mad. I was done. I met Ella Grace once. It wasn't planned. I was at the library. My quiet place. The one where I didn't have to explain myself. I was returning a book when I heard the voice. Hers. My sister's. Softer now. More tired. She was pushing a stroller with one hand, phone in the other, still talking like someone was watching, even when no one was. I should have turned and walked, but I didn't. I waited. She looked. Up, blink, recognition. Her mouth formed my name like it didn't quite belong to her anymore. Hey, I nodded. The baby stirred. Pink blanket, round cheeks, big, curious eyes. She started. I finished it for her quietly. Beautiful. A pause stretched between us, the kind that used to ache. Now it just existed. She'd love to know you, she said after a moment. I smiled gently, the way you smile at someone who doesn't understand that bridges don't rebuild just because you miss the view. Maybe, I replied. I didn't hold the baby. I didn't ask for a photo. I just stood there, soaking in the sound of the rain against the library windows, the scent of old pages, the knowledge that I wasn't bitter. I was untangled. The next week, I got a card in the mail, handwritten, from my father. I know we didn't do everything right. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope you're happy. Love, Dad. I folded it once, twice, placed it gently in a drawer with things I no longer wore but wasn't ready to throw. Away. The silence now isn't hollow, it's clean, like fresh sheets, like air after rain. I still go to the cafe on Fridays. I still light my own candles. I still keep the book with scribbled margins on my shelf. I live in a space that is mine, soft, quiet, whole. She still posts baby milestones, family brunches, laughing group shots I'm not in. I don't watch anymore, not out of spite, but because I'm finally starring in my own life.